Well, it's that time of year again, where I look back and rank all of the games I earned platinum trophies in. There were quite a few milestones this year that I'm proud of, including the fact that I now have over 100 platinum trophies to my name. I managed to wiggle my way into the top 10,000 players in the US according to psnprofiles.com, and speaking of that site, I'm actually the first person to earn a platinum in a game according to that site. But we're here to rank each of the 34 games that I earned a platinum in 2022, and if you've seen my previous videos on this subject, you probably know what you're in for. Like Sony's trophy system, each of these games will be awarded a tier of bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. These rankings are not based on how much I enjoyed playing the games in question, but rather how easy or difficult and how fun or boring I found the platinum unlocking process to be. Bronze are usually in hastily made games that don't offer much value outside of the trophies themselves. Silver are games that are difficult to unlock the platinum, but have more quality or fun to them than bronze tier games. Gold ranked games are those that are fun to unlock everything, but maybe something within the story, the gameplay, or even a trophy drags them down for me a bit. And platinum tier ranked games are just fun to play and fun to complete. We've done this rodeo 3 times now, so let's just roll right into another year. Starting with the bronze tier, let's rank every platinum trophy I earned in 2022. A game I specifically only played to make a joke in my video talking about some of the rarest trophies I had earned to date, My Friend Peppa Pig is basically an interactive episode of the show. It's a game meant for toddlers who watch the show, but I'm not a baby and I only marginally enjoy watching it. So this was basically a slog of a walking simulator to sit through, one that got me as many gold trophies as a Ratalaika game along with the platinum for just under an hour of effort. Yeah, this one was obviously stupidly simple, and that was kind of the whole joke of me playing this bronze tier ranked baby game, so moving on. The third and quite possibly final entry in this trilogy of overly simple titles, My Name is Mayo 3 is much like the previous 2 titles, but instead of having to tap on the same jar of mayo 10,000 plus times, here you only need to reach 7,000 tippy taps before things take a turn. Much like how Mayo 2 introduced various minigames to play at certain points of the adventure, once the story shifts to the Mayo dealing with the loss of its father, this game is pretty wild, the gameplay changes from a clicker game to a walking simulator through a forest trail, eating random mushrooms along the way and tripping balls that either change the background of the forest or have you play one of several minigames. At the end of the day, My Name is Mayo 3 is essentially the exact same game as the previous 2 that I earned purely for completion of the trilogy, but while it does something unique for its ending, it's not really enough to lift it out of the bronze tier trophy-wise. One of the worst reviewed games on PSN, Orcslayer is a mostly uninspired and tedious experience that looks like it had a budget only slightly higher than the typical Ratalaika game. Every level just involves you entering an open area by either walking into it or chopping down a needless barrier, letting waves and waves of orcs spawn to kill, killing enough of them to get them to stop spawning, and then just moving on. The only time this cycle gets challenged at all is during the final boss fight, but that's only because he summons an unending stream of orc skeletons and frequently puts up an impenetrable shield, which made the fight last over 20 minutes longer than it needed to. As in, it lasted 20 minutes. Considering this game pops up on multiple worst games of all time lists, it should come as no shock that this one was just a long, boring slugfest of a bronze tier game. I thought I was going to have some trouble getting the platinum in Chivalry 2 because of a few combat-specific situational trophies, but was surprised by how easy those were once I focused my efforts solely on earning them. Things like killing enemies with bread or getting 2 double kills while very injured came surprisingly easily, but that's not what I hated about this experience enough to rank it silver. Instead, the thing that kept me playing for an extra 10 to 12 hours more than I otherwise would have needed to was just trying to load some maps, because the game doesn't have any form of map selection, and yet multiple trophies require you to play on specific maps. I basically just had to sit there, load into a match, hope it was on a map that I needed, back out and try again if it's not. Or worse, play through a match when a map did come up and hope I would have a competent enough team to be on the winning side. This plat would be rated gold if I was allowed to actually choose what maps I wanted to play on, but that's not how it worked out, so this one gets a silver tier ranking. I had genuinely thought I would just never get this platinum. Not just because Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout is an online-only game and a competitive one at that, but because for the longest time, I was bad at it and had an incredibly hard time earning even a single victory in the game. What's worse for me was the fact that not only are there a few trophies directly related to winning, but one of them wants you to do that 5 times in a row. Fortunately for me, Fall Guys regularly introduces temporary game modes for players to partake in, and thanks to the Sneak Thieves game mode, I was able to get these trophies and eventually get the platinum. I love playing this game, even if the trophies require a level of random chance and skill that at times feels very much like it's not on my side, but now that I have this silver tier ranked platinum, I can go back to simply being bad at the game. LEGO Pirates of the Caribbean was hard to get through for a number of reasons. The fact that the game has the first 4 movies packed into it wasn't great since I only really liked the first one and only parts of the second and third, but couple that with having to stream the game with my PlayStation Plus premium subscription, and it makes what is normally a grind-heavy slog that much heavier. I surprisingly didn't run into too many problems while streaming though. The game did kick me out twice near the end of some levels, and there were some frame drops here or there, so it wasn't exactly ideal. It also doesn't help that this game has a hub area that you constantly have to go back to and just hope that certain characters appear there so you can unlock everything. And the game's humor, while sometimes fantastic, is mostly just alright despite it being the classic pantomiming of the original LEGO titles. In general, I think this one just wasn't for me, because I'm not some Pirates of the Caribbean mega fan or anything, but it's still a LEGO title at the end of the day, and worthy of at least a silver rank on this list. The reboot of the Saints Row franchise may have launched as a buggy, unpolished mess, but seeing as I'm a fan of Saints Row 4, I felt like I was right at home. The game makes a few weird choices admittedly, like having a drift mechanic for driving instead of just a handbrake, but overall it's a relatively fun open world to explore, even if it at times feels barren. The trophies for the most part just involve you collecting a bunch of things and playing through the story, but with how much monotonous activities I had to go through just to complete all of the challenges and whatnot, on top of the annoying stipulation of a single co-op trophy that took far longer to earn than I would have liked, it was enough for me to drop this one down into the silver tier. Whereas the newest Saints Row rebooted the franchise, Saints Row the Third is the precursor to my favorite Saints Row game, and I was genuinely surprised at how much I enjoyed my time in Steelport, where things were just on the cusp of going balls to the wall, as opposed to the all-out frenzy that is Saints Row 4. That said, a lot of the activities, like with Saints Row 4 and Saints Row 2022, start to feel a bit samey, and take quite a while to complete, especially the assassination target and vehicle stealing missions. The big difference is that with Saints Row 4, you have superpowers to make things at least a little bit more fun. Here, it's just gunplay and driving around with an occasional wacky twist thrown in, like there's a tiger in your car. On top of that, there's 41 distinct challenges that each require such precise actions to be taken over and over that it becomes a seemingly unending grind towards the end. While I enjoyed the game and the grind for at least a little bit, I'm going to have to get yet another game in the franchise a silver tier ranking. Look, I enjoy playing Among Us. It's one of those games that's just simple, easy, and can be a lot of fun to play. But I'm also not a big fan of trophy lists that require online-only play and cooperation-based trophies, so this one was a bit rough for me in terms of categorization. Among Us is a game that not only requires a lot of very specific things to happen, but almost all of them are affected by other players, which can be infuriating to go after. Fortunately for me, I have no shame, and was able to cheese my way through a few of the more aggravating and hyper-specific trophies that depend on other players thanks to my PC copy of the game, a few extra phones, and a lot of resetting. Otherwise, the trophies are just do the things for long enough and you get the platinum, so aside from those easily manipulated few, Among Us earns a gold tier ranking. Maybe I'm the imposter, that's why it got so high, who knows. Easily my favorite Rockstar game out of their entire catalog, this is one of those games I always wanted to complete but just never really did. I would say that overall I enjoyed my time revisiting the game, even if a few of its more glaring and outdated problems kept it from being a perfect experience. As far as trophies are concerned, it more or less sees you completing the game, doing a few specific bully-related tasks, and spending hours upon hours just causing trouble and using your 3 modes of getting around long after everything else is done for the sake of trophies. It's still a fun game, even if some of the jokes and mechanics are greatly outdated, but 1 or 2 trophies requiring you to spend so much time in the game than is needed knocks this one down on its own into the gold tier. An adorable little story about a small community and their various problems, Button City stars a little polygonal fox named Fennel who moves to a new town and makes friends at the local arcade. The game mostly has you talk to everyone, help them with their problems, traverse a weird world where every major location is just stacked on top of one another, and playing one of 3 games within the arcade. The trophies, meanwhile, have you collect everything, complete optional objectives by buying certain snacks, and being very good at a DDR minigame that's more difficult than it needs to be thanks to an awkward button layout that you can't change. Honestly, this whole experience is just fun and wholesome, but with the difficulty of the DDR game, as well as the lack of clearly defining how to actually use the snacks you get, I'll only be awarding Button City with a gold token, tier ranking. Following in the footsteps of Goat Simulator is Deer Simulator, a wild and wacky sandbox title full of random humor, absurd content, and strange situations. Where Goat Simulator tries to occasionally ground itself in somewhat realistic goat gameplay, Deer Simulator comes out of the gate swinging by having you save a deer's life from a speeding van, only to be then reincarnated as a deer yourself. After that, you can run around deerifying people, replace your antlers with guns, recreate popular anime tropes, and even fight gigantic laser-spitting koalas. You know, your average deer-related activities. All told, the game doesn't take too long to complete, with most of the trophies being relegated to just causing mayhem and surviving the ensuing chaos, but the relatively quick completion, lack of replayability once it's done, and 1 or 2 hidden objectives keep this one just shy of being platinum in my mind. It's a fun enough game on its own that could do with just a bit more content in the open world to make it more replayable if you ask me, but it is still a fun, but quick, gold tier ranked plat on this list. A twin-stick shooter clearly inspired by games like Smash TV, Freak Out! Calamity TV Show is a very simple wave survival game with a very tongue-in-cheek story. With 5 chapters that have 4 stages each, the game is a relatively quick, if occasionally infuriating experience, and the trophies largely boil down to completing the game and killing a lot of specific enemies. The trophy hunting aspect of the game only really requires you to revisit a few levels through level select after beating the game, so you can rack up those specific enemy kills that I mentioned earlier. It's probably one of the easier titles that doesn't feel like a cheap Bradalaka game on this list, but that said, the game can occasionally be punishing, and the lack of what is or isn't a specific enemy for 1 or 2 of the trophies meant I spent more time within certain levels than I needed to, so I'm gonna bump this one down to a gold tier and just leave it at that. Any game that gives you a golden poop hat that lets you in turn poop on command is certainly worthy of completion, and Goat Simulator 3 is just that game. Following in the footsteps of what came before, Goat Simulator 3 is a lot of what made that game great, but with a much larger area to explore, a ton more references to gaming and pop culture, and the chance to play with 3 others, which must be nice. Goat Simulator 3 is a wonderful little game that if you're a fan of the first, you'll surely enjoy. And what's better is that the trophies largely revolve around doing silly tasks and completing things with no flappy goat to speak of. So for that fact alone, this game earns a gold tier ranking as shiny as the aforementioned poop hat I unlocked for earning it. A side-scrolling golf game taking place in a post-apocalypse Earth, Golf Club Wasteland is a relaxing little title that often requires precision when going for the platinum. Not only do you need to play through the game at least 3 times, at least one of those runs without any errors, but there are also specific objectives on levels to complete that can take a few runs at the same hole to complete. There's nothing too challenging outside of the aforementioned precision, which for the Iron Man mode trophy can be absolutely punishing, and that helps to make it a solid enough gold tier ranked trophy. It Takes Two is a fantastic co-op experience that has a few glaring problems in my opinion. On one hand, the game constantly changing its playstyle keeps it from becoming too monotonous, but that also means that newer gamers or people who don't play a wide variety of games might struggle more with how often the changes occur. As far as the trophies are concerned, this dichotomy comes into play as well, but mainly with regards to the various minigames scattered around the levels. On more than one occasion while Claude and I played through this, I had a distinct advantage in the games purely because I play games more often, and that was frustrating for both of us when the rest of the game is so focused around cooperation. All that said, the rest of the trophies were as simple as finding a thing and having fun, so in general I enjoyed our time unlocking these trophies, and It Takes Two walks away with a gold tier ranking on this list. Plus the game includes one of the darkest yet silliest moments in any game, and I have to applaud it for that alone. Minecraft is one of those games I've played for years on various platforms, dropping back in for a few hours or a few months at a time, and as such, I've basically done everything that's required for the trophy list at least once, at least in regards to what's required for the platinum. However, I didn't do all these things on PlayStation 4, so I'll admit that I cheated slightly on some of the more specific trophies like Zombie Doctor. I found a trophy unlocking server that has since just vanished, where I managed to get 1 or 2 of the specific trophies as well as some DLC ones, specifically going only for tasks I know I've completed on other systems to make things as fair as possible. Is it admittedly cheap to do things this way? Yes, it is, but as I said, I've done all these things before at least once and know how difficult they can be, and I still had to wait for quite a while to get the Passing the Time trophy anyways, so I was comfortable fast-tracking myself a bit to earn this gold tier ranked platinum. A remake of the PlayStation 1 platformer game, Pac-Man World Re-Pac is a fairly standard platformer that I ranked slightly higher than Demon's Souls for some reason. You take out enemies, jump from platform to platform, fight the occasional boss, and boom, the game is over. The game also features a few maze-specific levels because you can't stray too far away from your routes, and for the most part, all you need to do is complete everything to get the platinum here. However, one specific trophy will be the bane of many a would-be platinum hunter, that being the Retro Gamer Trophy, where you have to beat the first 9 levels of the original Pac-Man, which, unless you're like me and have played it a bunch, is not an easy task, and is honestly the primary reason that this game will be awarded a gold tier ranking on this list. One of the online shows I've always loved was RiffTrax, which is basically the 3 guys who started Mystery Science Theater 3000 continuing to do what they do best, riff while watching movies. RiffTrax the game is basically that, but now you get to do it with friends using the format of Jackbox games where you enter your own prompts and choose from a series of options on your smartphone. The game itself is intentionally simple and meant to be played with friends, and that's exactly what I did over the course of a few weeks to earn this one. While we played, I would intentionally try to earn trophies without intervention or trying to get anyone to really do anything, and while I certainly didn't win many of those games, I still had a blast earning the trophies in this gold tier ranked game. A weird sort of puzzle game crossed with an infinite runner, where you move an ever-growing bus driving through various locales, going until you can't go no more. In Snaky Bus, you pick up passengers and bring them to specified bus stops to make your bus grow in length, and after a while, you have to not only traverse the environment that you're in, but the walls and walls made by your own bus. It's a quick little game with 1 or 2 kind of annoying trophies, including one where you have to just happen upon a random spot on the level to earn it that the game doesn't hint at all you can do, often discouraging similar actions in other parts of the same level, but it's one of those challenges I want to consistently get better at. It's still a fantastic little game, one that is just ridiculous and fun enough to still land on here as a gold tier ranking. To hear the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe tell it, the original release of the Stanley Parable in 2013 was a turning point for the games industry, one that pushed the potential of narrative-driven video games to new heights. And it's that fact alone that helps shape just about every new avenue and ending for the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, or the Stanley Parable 2, or whatever the game you're playing here ends up being called. Instead of just adding in more introspective or strange endings to the original title that occasionally comment on gaming as a whole, however, this time the new endings comment on the Stanley Parable itself, all while largely keeping the trophies intact from the Steam iteration of the game. Things like having to play for the entirety of a Tuesday or waiting for 10 years to unlock a trophy are mean but can be circumvented if needed, but between that and the fact that the narrator made fun of me for wanting collectibles and achievements in games in the first place, keeps this one in the gold tier for me. I know my hobby is silly, but only I get to make fun of me. What initially appears to be a simple slide puzzle game quickly evolves into something that has you looking at the world around you in a whole new way. Each area of the island is filled with simple at first puzzles, each one requiring you to move from one spot of a grid to another while separating colors, crossing dots, avoiding shadows, and more. In order to get the platinum, you don't need to do the various environmental puzzles, you don't need to find each of the recordings within the game, and you don't even really have to complete all of the many distinct areas of the island, just a majority of them. Once you've completed the areas that activate a laser, climb the mountain, and solve the final puzzle, all that's left is to complete a single hidden challenge that, well, it might take you a while. Once you solve that final puzzle, however, it's really the only major issue I have with the game. But the deed is done, and I managed to get this gold tier ranked platinum for my efforts. A quiet little point-and-click adventure that the developers call a interactive poem. The story of A Memoir Blue focuses on the relationship that protagonist Miriam has with her mother and her pursuits as an athlete. The game itself is very simple, simply asking the player to go through a few quick scenes within 6 chapters of reliving her youthful experiences through the visage of 2D representations of herself and her mother. The trophies, surprisingly, aren't simply awarded for completing the game like similar games would do. Instead, during specific sequences, you just need to go against the grain a bit, removing ice cubes from a glass instead of having them sink, knocking planks around instead of creating a path, things like that. Normally a game as simple as this would warrant a lower rank, but with the creativity behind the trophies themselves and the ease with which they're completed, I feel comfortable giving this one a platinum tier ranking. Probably one of the most simple to grasp rhythm games I have ever played, Beat Saber simply has players slashing at boxes to the beat of a song using a pair of different colored lightsabers. The song selection continues to grow with free updates and multiple paid DLC packs for popular bands, and any of them can be played to help with trophy progression, giving players a wider freedom of choice than something like Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory and its expansive but restricted to only Disney or Kingdom Hearts song playlist. The only real challenge here for me was the day and night trophy that makes you play in songs for at least 24 hours, but all I had to do was log in every other day, play a bunch of songs for like half an hour, and then move on to something else, giving me a decent cardio workout and my eventual platinum. It's just a fun rhythm game that I'm still playing even after unlocking the platinum, so this game most definitively deserves a platinum tier ranking on this list. A relaxing little point-and-click sort of adventure about a ghost violating more than just people's personal privacy, I Am Dead is a charming little romp about self-importance and identity that was more fun to play through than I initially thought it would be. The trophies for the game have you really only doing 3 things in each level: advance the story by finding people's memories to harvest and then finding the memento associated with that memory, scanning and dissecting various objects around the level so you can find Grenkins, and completing riddles for Mr. Whistable by finding objects based only on a title and your knowledge of the level. All in all, it's a fine enough experience with some good vocal performances with trophies that feel appropriately challenging for it, so I'm more than comfortable giving the game a platinum tier ranking. I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed this game when I live streamed it earlier in 2022, and the trophy list was a major factor as to why. Not only are the trophies relatively simple, but cleaning up is a breeze thanks to a level select and easy goals to achieve, especially since you don't even need to get every single thing for most of the collectibles. Overall, a stellar game where the only faults are a few technical issues and a story issue or two. I genuinely hope this game gets a sequel, but the trophy hunting side of things itself is more than worthy of a platinum tier ranking. A walking simulator about choice and freedom. Road 96 tells the story of teenagers trying to escape a country torn apart by politics. As you travel to the border, you'll run into several different characters, each of whom has a part to play in the story of Petria, and getting to know them helps shape the ultimate outcome of your story. The trophies largely revolve around completing tasks and doing small little things during your travels, with sometimes minute choices having major effects on the events of the game's ending. All in all, I greatly enjoyed my time with Road 96, enough to pick it up on PlayStation 5 after having already played it through on the Switch at least once, and I'm more than comfortable giving a game a platinum tier ranking on this list. A beautifully hand-drawn game about seeing souls into the hereafter, Spiritfarer takes some of the best aspects of resource management from games like Stardew Valley, and then combines it with hugging everyone to create a wonderfully moving experience. The majority of the game is spent tending to the needs of those aboard your boat, getting them their own homes and feeding them and whatnot, while the occasional side mission is there to help someone or to find materials you need to make specific things. All in all, it's a wonderfully relaxing title, and one that is more than worthy of a platinum tier ranking on this list. Aside from having one of the longest names in gaming that even a Kingdom Hearts title would scoff at, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is a wonderful remake of a widely regarded platformer collectathon that I never experienced in its prime. Each of the levels has a plethora of missions to tackle, things to collect, and a surprising variety of enemies to take on, and with 3 playable characters and their own unique abilities, it makes for gameplay that feels rarely monotonous. Some of the challenges could be a bit more clearly defined, and in some levels it's very easy to get lost without proper guidance, but overall it's a fun time to be had that I wish I had played sooner, and is well worth a platinum tier ranking on my list. A side-scrolling pseudo-platformer sci-fi adventure about a struggling musician finding himself outside the shadow of his famous uncle, The Artful Escape is a visually stunning experience with simple platforming challenges and a basic Simon Says style mechanic for jam sessions. The trophies themselves are all fairly standard and easy to execute, and the only real hurdle I had while trying to earn this platinum was dealing with the occasionally confusing Simon Says button layout. Between this and Button City, I'm not sure why devs have such a hard time with making easy-to-use DDR-like button layouts when all you need is 4 directions and there's 4 face buttons on the controller, but this one was a lot easier to deal with when compared to Button City, so it's just fine. In general, it's a relatively fun experience that could benefit from a bit more variety and branching paths, but is otherwise a stellar platinum tier ranked title. A comfortably simple little game about exploring various regions and photographing everything you find, Toem is such a cute little game that it's hard not to enjoy it. Just about everyone you come across has a problem that can be solved with a simple click of a shutter, and going around the various regions following clues is a simple and fun overall experience. The game was so fun, in fact, that I went ahead and got all the DLC trophies as well, which, like the base game, asks you to just complete everything in each region and take a whole bunch of photos, only this time on an island. Overall, Toem is a charming little experience that only takes a few hours to complete, but it's still a wonderful few hours worthy of a platinum tier ranking. An endearing little twin-stick shooter about a young girl named Colette who is basically a witch with a gun, Trigger Witch is fairly straightforward with its objectives and gameplay. Go from one area to the next helping people and fighting monsters, all while unlocking more guns and using them to fight more baddies. This game boasts a staggering 58 trophies to clear, but aside from one or two minorly annoying ones, they're all fairly easy to obtain. The annoying ones mostly are related to finding collectibles in the open world or doing weapon-specific tasks, but you also have the ability to buy a bunch of maps that reveal collectibles for a trophy anyways, and the weapon-specific ones are usually easy enough to figure out, so it kinda just works out in the end. Trigger Witch is a fairly simple but still fun twin-stick shooter, and well worth a platinum ranking on this list. Following in the floating robot footsteps of Job Simulator, Vacation Simulator has the player experiencing various facsimiles of human activities through the lens of robots trying to understand why humans do thing, but instead of being stuck behind a desk doing busy work or working at a gas station, players are instead encouraged to go on vacation at one of 3 locations. Each location has its own host of activities to partake in that fit thematically, and they even begin to cross over with one another in simple but fun ways. As far as trophies are concerned, it's basically the same as Job Simulator, with just a bit more legwork this time around, requiring more planning and thinking than simply following commands. In general, I found it surprisingly relaxing and fun, as any good vacation should be, so I'm comfortable giving this one a platinum tier ranking on my list. An isometric twin-stick shooter developed largely by one person and ported to consoles, Wildcat Gun Machine is a relatively quick, appropriately difficult, and fairly unique looking title. The game is pretty damn good, all things considered, only asking that you beat the game and get all the upgrades for its trophies, but the team behind the game's port to console had a little trouble with the trophies, making one of them unobtainable for the longest time. But one glitched trophy isn't enough to make me upset with this game, especially since I was the first person on PSNprofiles.com to play the game after an update was pushed through to earn myself the platinum. So I'm happy to give it a platinum tier ranking on this list, even if I had to wait a bit longer than I would have liked to. And with that, we have come to the end of another Platinums ranking video. I hope you found a few titles here you might not have been as familiar with, or ones that you might want to try out yourself now that you maybe have seen some gameplay footage and heard my thoughts on it. And I encourage you to try out games that seem interesting, even if they go against what you normally play. Close to half the games on this list are ones that I might not normally seek out, but are ones that I still enjoyed my time with. And I bet you'll find a few you might enjoy as well. Either way, thank you for watching, follow me at the socials and be sure to subscribe, and I will see all of you in the next video. Take care.